We have a great guest here today to join us and make sure that there's a lot of nonprofits and businesses that are working with You Can Vote this year, and we want to make sure you're all following the rules to make sure we're nonpartisan and helping all voters and not doing any of the no-nos when it comes to endorsing candidates or anything that would get you in any sort of trouble. And of course, that would be against You Can Vote's best practices and, of course, rules here as a 501c3 organization. So David is the policy advisor. Oh, I don't have your title in front of me, David. I'm sorry, I'm botching this for the NC Center for Nonprofits. He can tell us a little bit about himself in a second, and he's going to share some slides with us. And so the first part of the agenda will be David and making sure your organization stays compliant. And then we'll go into your marching orders and how we're helping voters right now. September is voter registration month. We need everyone to make sure the registration is up to date. And we've got a lot of new tools since this last call. So we're excited to share with you those. So without further ado, I'm gonna hand the floor over to David Heinen.
Hey, Kate, and I'm David Heinen with the North Carolina Center for Nonprofits. Kate, don't feel bad. I had to just look at my card to see what I always forget the official title. Vice President for Public Policy and Advocacy at the North Carolina Center for Nonprofits. It looks like my screen sharing is disabled. I'm just realizing. I don't know if you can enable it, but if not, I can do it without sharing the screen. It's not a huge deal. So for those of you who don't know, the North Carolina Center for Nonprofits, we are a network of nonprofits, about 1,400 nonprofit members that serve all 100 counties of North Carolina. We're an information resource for nonprofits, and we're an advocate for the nonprofit sector. And just as a disclaimer, I am an attorney. I have not practiced law other than representing the center in about 13 years since I've been here at the center. But in my previous life, I was in private practice representing nonprofits and often helping them with issues, 501c3s or C4s, on issues related to elections. So wanted to just kind of, as Kate mentioned, kind of briefly talk about what is permissible for 501c3 nonprofits, what's not permissible related to elections, to voter registration, and to other things related to elections in the next almost 2 months. And then also just go over just a couple, no, not literally a couple, a few frequently asked questions that we've been getting a lot, and some answers to those. And the other disclaimer I should give is that the answer to every yes or no question is always it depends. So there's always some nuance and some fine lines on things. So just starting off for 501c3s, and this includes, I saw that there are several people who are with houses of worship who are on the call today. This applies to operating charitable nonprofits, to foundations, to grant-making organizations, and also to houses of worship. That under Section 501c3 of the Internal Revenue Code, we can't support or oppose candidates for office, so we can't, as an organization, endorse a candidate or say don't vote for a particular person or endorse a particular political party. We can't make campaign contributions, and generally we can't coordinate activities with political campaigns. We'll get a little bit more into that in a moment. So that's kind of what we can't do. We can't be partisan, essentially. But there's a lot of things, and I know that You Can Vote has done really, and the center is really happy that You Can Vote is in existence and is doing such great work about getting good, accurate, and user-friendly information to nonprofits and others in communities about elections in North Carolina. And it is so important now as the 2020 election is so different from previous elections, with so many more people voting absentee, with a little bit different process for requesting an absentee ballot, and with no voter ID this time. There are so many different changes in the election process. It's a complicated process, and really demystifying it, making it easy to understand, and spreading those resources is really critical. So one thing that nonprofits can do is nonpartisan voter registration. I should say another role I have is as a board member of Nonprofit Vote, which is a national organization that does capacity building for 501c3 nonprofits on, as we call it, voterizing them, getting them to be more engaged in nonpartisan voter registration, get out the vote activities, whether that's rides to the polls or other things, really to make sure that people who are registered to vote actually do become actual voters and every election. And voter education. More on that in a second. One other really important thing that we kind of see as parallel to voter registration and get out the vote activities is promoting the 2020 census over the next 27 days while the census is still kind of in its final process. About a quarter of North Carolinians have still not responded. About a quarter of households in North Carolina have not responded either through self-response or through the non-response follow-up. And that's a lot higher than most other states. So that we're at risk of losing a lot of federal funding and potentially a seat in Congress. But then the other thing that nonprofits can do is nonpartisan voter education. So some of that is what, kind of the core work of You Can Vote about the election process. And that's really, really important because what nonprofit votes found, not just anecdotally, but by doing a lot of research, is that because nonprofits are such trusted messengers with their clients, with the communities that they serve, that people actually listen to nonprofits. So if somebody's going to talk to you about early voting, about absentee voting, probably if they're going to a nonprofit for childcare services, for housing assistance, for other types for food assistance, for other basic services, they rely for healthcare. They rely on that nonprofit. They trust that nonprofit, and that if the nonprofit provides them information about how to vote, not for whom to vote, but how to vote, the process, that they're more likely to listen to it from them than just about any other source. About policy issues, so not telling people how to vote, but informing them. There's so much, and with it, in a presidential election year, that so much of the energy, so much of the media attention gets sucked up on that one top thing on the ballot, but there's so much more on the ballot, and there are a lot of policy issues that candidates are going to be talking about. So nonprofits can inform people about those policy issues, and again, not telling people who to vote for, but just to understand when candidates are talking about something like access to healthcare, about some specifics of education policy, food assistance, so many other things that nonprofits do and that are important to communities to help them be informed voters. And then interacting with candidates in a nonpartisan way. A lot of nonprofits do, and I know that some are doing this year, do candidate questionnaires. We'll do a nonpartisan candidate forum. And again, these are not things where they're endorsing candidates, but merely getting information from all the candidates in the same format about where they stand on certain issues, so that the voters can kind of compare them and make their own decisions. But also, as there are candidate events, mostly virtually this year, obviously, nonprofits can certainly participate in those in a nonpartisan way, to ask questions, to really get the issues that are at the heart of their missions into those discussions. A big question we get is staff and board members and volunteers of nonprofits. They certainly, even though organizations themselves have to steer away from partisan politics of their 501c3s, individuals certainly can talk about candidates or politics generally. They can't do it in their official capacity, but staff, board members can certainly be engaged in things. They can volunteer for campaigns. It's just really important that if they're doing that, to make sure that they're not using their time, using any of their resources from the nonprofit, or implying that the nonprofit is endorsing the candidates for whom they volunteer. They can make campaign contributions. Again, it needs to be from their own bank account. It can't be from the nonprofit's account. I think that's common sense. They can even run for office, and a lot do. And if you look on the ballot throughout North Carolina, there are a lot of nonprofit board members who are running for state legislative positions, for county board positions, for judicial positions, for council of state positions. There are people who work for nonprofits who are running for a lot of those offices for seats in Congress. So people who are volunteers, staff, board members of nonprofits absolutely can be very personally involved in the political process. They just need to be really careful to not use the nonprofit's resources or name when they do it. And if they're really known, if you're the executive director of a nonprofit and that's a pretty high profile organization in the community, sometimes you have to be a little explicit that I'm running for office, I'm volunteering for this campaign, but I'm doing this personally, and my nonprofit doesn't endorse me in any way. That it's not at all connected to that nonprofit. So I just want to kind of answer a few questions, and if you've got others, if there's time, I'm happy to answer those. And if there's not, then yeah, I think I'll have my contact information up at the end, and Kate can get it to you too if you want to ask offline as well. So some questions we get a lot is, can your nonprofit encourage people to vote by absentee ballot and provide information about how to vote by mail? And this is one where there's a definite yes answer. I said most of the yes or no questions is not a clear answer. Absolutely, you can do that. So encouraging people, providing information about how to vote. And again, I'm preaching to the choir here, but we at the center are really sending people towards You Can Vote, because you guys have the best information out there, that really user-friendly information on all things elections in North Carolina this year. And we think every nonprofit needs to be getting that information out there. Can our nonprofit coordinate with a church for rides to the polls? Yes, you can. So another one where there's an easy, so starting out with the easy questions. Another question that we get a lot is that, a lot of times candidates or political parties also do rides to the polls. And I know rides to the polls are a little bit different this year. Maybe looking at big vans or something where you can provide somebody a ride to the polls, but still have some safeties, have social distancing in there, not have a lot of people in a van at once. So it's a little bit different than when it's been done before. But definitely you cannot coordinate with a political party for rides to the polls. That's going to be something that violates that basic ban on electioneering in Section 501c3 of the Internal Revenue Code. Can a nonprofit let a candidate use our facilities for a campaign event? This is something that came up prior to March of this year. So before the primary, we actually got this question a lot, and we're still kind of getting it now. I know that there are a lot fewer in-person events, but sometimes nonprofits have a facility that's really good for kind of hosting a virtual event. They may have some type of place that would be a good setting for it. And often a nonprofit is, particularly in smaller towns, may have the best meeting space, in a community where it really makes sense for candidates to have campaign events. So generally, a nonprofit can't let a candidate use their facilities for a campaign event. The IRS actually in 2007 issued some guidance on this very question, and a few other questions related to nonprofits and elections. And what the IRS has said is that technically there's a way you can do it. So you can rent your facility to candidates or to political parties. You can't offer it for free, but rent it at your usual rate. So if you normally would offer your facility for free, probably don't do it. But if you would rent it, make sure you're charging the same rate. You also really need to make sure that all candidates feel like that they're welcome to do it, and that the invitation's open to all candidates. So probably if a candidate from one party for a particular office is going to have an event using your facilities, and this could also mean using your mailing list or your email list, not just your physical facilities. So using anything that is owned by the nonprofit. If you're renting it to one candidate, you probably want to go ahead and let any opponent that they have, not just from the two main parties, but from any other parties. So if there's a libertarian and a Republican and a Democrat who are all running for the same office, and the Democrat is using your mailing list, is renting your mailing list, it is best practice and probably safest to protect your tax exempt status to make the same offer to the other two candidates for the same office. The reality is, it's unlikely that all the candidates are going to want to use your facility for something. And when one is doing it and others aren't, it definitely creates the appearance, even if you've done everything to dot your I's and cross your T's, or dot your T's and cross your I's, however you prefer to do your penmanship. Even if you've done everything correctly, that there's still going to be a perception by a lot of people in the community that you are coordinating and doing something that's impermissible. And the reality is, anytime a nonprofit, and particularly a nonprofit that is a service provider in a community, does one thing that's perceived as wrong or illegal, it really brings into question the credibility of all the other good programs and services a nonprofit provides. So I think that even if you're legally doing things correctly, I always encourage nonprofits to think twice about letting candidates choose to rent their facilities for campaign events, because it definitely creates a perception. And the reality is, in North Carolina, where about a third of voters are Democrat, about a third unaffiliated, and about a third are Republican. It's not quite a third, but it's about a third each of those. I think Democrats most, unaffiliated second most, and Republican third most. About 2/3 of people in the community are not going to be affiliated with whichever party that candidate is, and are probably going to have reason to, to question the credibility of your organization. Can a C3 nonprofit take positions on legislative issues on election year? Yes, she can. I will say that the center is, we advocate on policy issues at the state level and at the federal level, and we're certainly taking positions on legislative issues. You just want to be cautious about that, that when you're doing so, that if there are current elected officials, whether it's city council members, whether it's state legislators, county board members, members of Congress, members of your school board, who are currently in office, but also are running for re-election, that when you're talking about legislative issues, that you're not implying that you're endorsing one of those current incumbents for re-election, because they kind of have a dual role then. So just again, right in the period right before an election, which is now, now that people, you can, as of this week, you can go online and request your absentee ballot. We're in the election period now. So be just really careful that anytime you're taking a position on a legislative issue, that you're not, particularly where any legislators are running for re-election this year, that you're not implying an endorsement. Can a C3's board chair personally endorse a candidate for office? Yes, as I mentioned before, you just need to make sure that, that it's not implying that the nonprofit's endorsing the candidate. And is it a problem if the candidate then, after they've been endorsed by the nonprofit's board chair, goes and touts the board chair and says, this person who's the board chair of X nonprofit, well-known nonprofit, is there? Legally, that's still okay for the nonprofit, because the nonprofit has not created that coordination, as long as the nonprofit isn't paying for whatever ad the candidate runs to do that. And that's where it would be a problem. It might, again, create a perception problem, because, and it's one that's not the nonprofit's own doing. So I don't think it's best practice for nonprofits to tell their staff and board members not to personally volunteer with, endorse candidates, but just to maybe remind the candidates when they do that to please, please, please not mention the nonprofit's name in anything they do. Can C3 make contributions to a PAC? Nope, you can't. There are ways to, and in fact, we were just right before this talking with a nonprofit that's looking at starting a 501c4 organization, a social welfare organization that can create a separate PAC, can make contributions, but there has to be a lot of firewalls put into place between the 501c3 and the related C4. And can a 501c3 acknowledge an incumbent running for a re-election who comes to a fundraising event or another event? Yes, absolutely you can, but just make sure you're not mentioning the election. And the reality is, if your mayor comes to an event, even if she's running for re-election, it's fair game to, it's appropriate, it's good etiquette, and good common sense to acknowledge that the mayor is there or some other elected officials there. But when it is in election season, just make sure you're not mentioning them as a candidate. Talk about them in their official role. And this is this last one's a really difficult one. And it's one that's come up a lot this year with things like Black Lives Matter events. Can a C3 nonprofit co-sponsor an event with a political party? So it may be something where there's very much it's a policy issue based event that is really aligned with the nonprofit's values and mission, but also happens to be one where there are other, either politicians or political parties who want to be kind of co-sponsors, the leads of the event. It is legally permissible to do it, but it's really important to think about the optics of it and whether it appears that it is an overtly political event, or whether it's something where it's really a policy-based event where there are a lot of C3s that are part of it, and there may be some people who are affiliated with one particular political party. And there are definitely events, that kind of go with either of the two main political parties that are out there for this. But it's one that comes up a lot, and I think it's coming up more and more, as social issues, particularly issues, related to racism in our country, as there are more events related to that the political parties and C3s are doing. So just as if you're a nonprofit that's doing that, you want to think really carefully. And there's not one answer for every C3. Legally, you could probably do it, but practically for some organizations, it probably makes a lot of sense to do it. For others, again, thinking about that, only about a third of North Carolinians are going to be registered with whatever political party you're kind of seen as affiliating with. So with that, we usually kind of have 3 resources that we like to encourage nonprofits to look at related to election things. Nonprofit Vote, You Can Vote. I think you're all familiar with those 2. And then Boulder Advocacy, which is a project of the Alliance for Justice in DC, has really good user-friendly information about what nonprofits can do related to legislative lobbying, to election-related issues. And it's kind of a good legal analysis of that. So with that, I can leave my contact information up, and unless there are questions, yield it back to Kate.
David, thank you so much. Thank you for providing this, your contact information. And if folks have questions in the chat, we're going to have some chat Q&A time after I get through stuff when it comes to voting here. So, feel free to chat your questions to the panelists, and David can answer it. Or if you have questions for at the end, and David, if you can't stay with us, I can do my best to field those questions as well. So with that being said, it is September. Like I said, it is voter registration month, and we have got, and now I have to make myself the host. Hold on. David, could you click on your name and make me the host again? I made you the host instead of the co-host accidentally. Thank you. So many fun Zoom technical things. Okay, so we've got a lot to cover for you. Our theme this month is empower yourself so you can empower others. There's so much going on. And we have got our Voting Rights Champions program up and running that I think most of you probably know about and have contacted us for materials, but I'm going to go over it again. And we created an awesome, very quick video that encompasses everything that we're trying to do right now, especially in the month of September and October when it comes to voting. So I'm going to go over to our Voting Rights Champions page and just do a show and tell. So if you go to become a champion, this is where you can sign up to get our materials and sign up to help your neighbors vote this year. This is how we're distributing our fridge cards and our materials, and as a way for you and your nonprofit to have access to all of our library of training and social media assets, and of course our physical materials for anyone who's working with the public directly. So we've got a lot of options that you can sign up to get. Everything is in English and in Spanish. Of course, our fridge cards are the most popular because they're the most comprehensive information that we have, and all in one little handy dandy card. And of course, we have masks, and these posters are a new item that are super popular, both in English and Spanish. They are really received well, and they really, really look great. So hopefully, if you have places where they would be willing to hang those up, we would want you to request for those locations. So this is the request form, and when people, I think we have about 175 or so people who have filled this out before already for their organizations, and we really are hoping to get all of these materials into hands and get them out this month ASAP, because we are approaching several deadlines, including the voter registration deadline of October 9th. And so we also said we would provide all of our champions and nonprofits and businesses with a little training video on how to use these materials. And the thing I love about this video is that it's 10 minutes long, and it is all-encompassing with how to register, how to use our online registration tool, eligibility, voting information. So I'm going to just go ahead and show it to you because I think that you will find it very useful, and you will be able to share it with other nonprofits and other organizations in your community so they can go ahead and get the request to start educating their communities about voting this year. So I am going to reshare my screen to make sure I have the sound. Oh, sorry. Make sure I have the sound ready to share. Okay, here we go.
We are the voting rights champions. Yes. Thank you for supporting North Carolina voters with verified voting information in 2020. With so much misinformation going around, providing the basic facts about how to register, how and where to vote early, and how to make your vote count is critical to empowering voters to make their voice heard. Be sure to display your materials right away and place them where they'll get the most traction. Yard signs should be placed where people can see them and are potentially waiting around. Extra signs can be placed at alternate entrances or intersections. Please note that yard signs are not well suited for neighborhoods. Think about where the most number of people would benefit from seeing this message. Posters should be displayed where people are standing in line or on entrances or exits. Restrooms and community boards are also a great place to display posters. Fridge cards should be distributed to voters freely. Place in takeout bags, on a counter near the checkout, in backpacks or clothing distribution bags, in line at a testing location, however you get information to people. You may consider printing a sign with your logo that says free voting information or Vote 2020, we support voters. Your customers will appreciate the help. If you or your team have conversations with voters, everything they need to know is on the fridge card. Use the fridge card as a guide for your conversation. If you can only share one thing with voters, stress the importance of verifying their voter registration address on youcanvote.org/register. If the voter has questions you can't answer, don't make it up. Direct them to the voter hotline on the fridge card and youcanvote.org. It's really important not to misstate any voting rules or procedures. Laws change frequently in North Carolina. We never want anyone to accidentally give a voter the wrong information. When in doubt, refer to the fridge card. This brief training on eligibility, registration, and voting information should give you what you need to know to answer basic questions. Feel free to join us for the full hour-long voter empowerment training anytime. Just visit youcanvote.org/training.
So, who can register to vote in North Carolina? Are you a U.S. citizen who will be at least 18 years old on Election Day, November 3rd? Will you have lived in North Carolina for at least 30 days as of Election Day? If applicable, have you completed all terms of a felony conviction, including probation and parole? If you said yes to all three, you can register and vote. Before we get you registered, we need to make a choice. Where and how do you want to vote this year? You should register at your current address or where you call home. For students, this is typically in your home residence in North Carolina, at your campus residence, or in your home state.
Now that we have that covered, let's get registered. Even if you plan to vote early, you should get registered to vote now to reduce lines at early voting. It's a good idea to check your new academic calendars to be sure of your location during the voting period. Let's go to youcanvote.org/getregistered. First, fill in your info in the form on the screen to see if you are registered where you live. If registration is not confirmed or not correct, it's time to get registered. If you are living in student housing, be sure to check our campus address cheat sheet before registering on campus for the correct address. Visit youcanvote.org/students for more info. Live in another state? Select your state and you'll be directed to the proper registration system. If you have an NC driver's license and your full social security number, select Open NC website. Now, you'll go to the DMV's online registration system. You will select Go to Voter Registration Application. Select Continue to DMV Services. Select Continue as Guest. Enter your identifying information and complete your voting information to get registered. If you do not have an NC ID or your full social security number, select Continue Registration. Enter your residential address or your mailing address if you get mail at a different location. Submit your voter information and you'll be mailed your voter registration form that you simply need to sign, date, and return in the pre-addressed stamped envelope that is provided for free. Mail the signed and dated form right away to be sure you are registered by the deadline, October 9th. Now that you've completed the registration process, you can expect your voter registration card to arrive by mail in a few weeks. This will list your Election Day voting site. You can also confirm your registration at youcanvote.org/lookup.
Think about where you will be during the election and how you plan to vote. There are 3 ways to vote in North Carolina: during early voting, on Election Day, or by mail. Polling sites will be open and will have social distancing and sanitation protections for voters. You can vote early at any early voting site in your county between October 15th and October 31st. We highly recommend early voting because you can update your registration and vote at the same time, which is not allowed on Election Day. For first-time voters or students, in-person voting during this period is the easiest way to ensure your vote counts. With 17 days of voting offered, there is no need to wait in long lines on Election Day, only to find out that you are at the wrong polling site or you're not registered. You can look up your early voting site at www.youcanvote.org/voting. You can vote on Election Day, November 3rd, but only at the polling site where you are registered to vote. Register to vote by October 9th and be sure to vote at your assigned location between 6:30 a.m. and 7:30 p.m. if you're voting on Election Day. You can vote absentee by mail. You must be registered to vote first to request your mail-in ballot. Just make sure to follow the step-by-step guide at youcanvote.org/mail to ensure that your vote counts, as simple but common mistakes can lead to your ballot not being valid. Be sure to request and submit your absentee ballot to be received by your County Board of Elections before October 27th, 2020 by 5 p.m. Don't wait, submit your request as soon as possible. Oh, and remember, there is no photo ID required to vote in 2020, and ID is not needed to get registered. Now that you are registered and have made your plan on where and how to vote, it is time to research your ballot. You can visit youcanvote.org/WOB for our comprehensive guide to the offices on your ballot, and a link to vote411.org where you can find nonpartisan information on the candidates running to receive your vote.
Be sure to share that you're a voting rights champion and encourage others to join you. We'd love to see you on social media with your You Can Vote gear. You can also make sure others in your community are ready to vote by sharing You Can Vote's educational materials and online resources on your social media channels. Visit youcanvote.org/handouts to download our social media toolkit with messages and graphics you can share. If you need any more materials, submit your order on youcanvote.org/champions and we'll be in touch.
All right, I'm not going to play it again. So I hope that you all enjoyed that video. It just came out. So feel free to share it with anyone else. As you can see, we cram a lot into 10 minutes, like everything that you need. And of course, I have the slides to back it up that we're also going to send you so that you can print out all of this information and not have to, go back and find it in that little piece of the video at any given time. So I'm just going to sort of summarize what we're telling folks for voter education and empowerment right now and where we are on the deadline and calendar of information that we're getting out. So like I said, our #1 priority through October 9th is to get registered at your current address and to have everyone verify this address on our tool. So we're doing this on social through our champions materials. We're doing phone banks and text banks. So as long as you attend a voter empowerment training, you can sign up to do phones and text banks together with your team or on your own. We're also doing a lot of drive-up distribution lines. So if you have big events coming up for your organization where a lot of voters are going to be coming or standing in line and you want to provide voter education, voter registration, like we've got tablets that we can send some of our staff members to support you in making sure, voter registration is the first stop in the line for distribution of materials or food or diaper bank, all of those good things. And then of course, like David said, the census is really, really important. We want everyone to be counted. Do it now. Door knockers are going door to door right now. For non-responders, they have a badge, they have PPE, they will never ask for personal information. They have a census tote bag. So you can really clearly see that these are official census workers. So make sure that everybody knows that they should reply and get their census information right now. It's also right on the fridge card too. We've got the call-in number. And so when we were doing a food distribution line on Saturday, we made sure everyone was registered. And then we say, okay, if you haven't done your census, let's call it in right now. Pick up your phone, dial the number. They can take your census information over the phone. And like the video said, we are educating folks on those 3 ways to vote in North Carolina. Not everyone needs to vote by mail. Early voting is going to be great. There's an average of 70% increase in hours across the counties across the state from 2016. So that's a lot of early voting hours so that we'll avoid having crowded lines. Of course, the first day and the last day are always really busy. So if you go in the first week, the middle to early-ish period of early voting, you should be able to get in and out in time and quickly. So let's help voters make sure that they follow the rules and are prepared and know their options, know their rights. If for some reason they need to vote by mail, they can do it, or if they change their mind, just choose one way. It's a felony to vote more than one way in North Carolina, and you will not be allowed to vote if you've already submitted your absentee ballot. They catch that at the polling locations. We are educating all voters on what's on the ballot. If you haven't checked out our latest and greatest video on education is on your ballot, you definitely need to head over there right after this meeting and check out the new 2-minute video on that education is on your ballot, and share with any educators, teachers. We want this shown in all the high school classrooms, honestly, all of these little videos. So civil rights, education, and healthcare are already animated and have the worksheet. Next up is criminal justice, and then climate. are going to be our 5 sort of issue areas, connecting who's on your ballot or what offices are on your ballot and how they impact those issues that you care about. So please share that. And you can also now look up your sample ballot too. If you're registered, you can see who's running for your vote right now. And then we have these new Know Your Rights toolkits for all of our different populations. We have a toolkit for seniors, military, LGBTQ, people with disabilities, students, incarcerated voters, new citizens, non-English speakers. So I highly encourage you, and maybe we'll head over there in a second to our handouts page. The icons for all of this are on our homepage. So this is a 2-pager. It's really, really easy to use and really wonderful guide for all of these different questions that these different communities have about voting and about exercising their rights. Like the video said, the only voters who need to show an ID this year are those that are getting registered the same day during early voting. And that can be any sort of identifying document that has your name and your address on it. Your photo ID, your driver's license never needs to match. The address on that never needs to match the address for your voter registration. So any of these documents can be used as a proof of residency document if you're registering to vote during early voting. And we may have gone over this for y'all already, but you'll see on all of our materials, the words that we use are really important about voting. So you always see your voice matters. We choose candidates who share our values. Local elections are decided by just a few votes. So if the national and federal elections seem like, nothing's going to make a difference in my life, we have had a lot of folks say that to us. Pull them down to the down ballot races. And that's how our What's on the Ballot tool is really helpful. You can just ask voters, what do you care about? It's on your 2020 ballot. I can find it right here. If it's criminal justice, if it's climate, if it's healthcare, let's find the offices closer to home that really impact this issue for you. And then we have, of course, our eligible 8 responses also in our training documents page. These are the things we hear time and time again. I can't vote, I don't vote, my ID doesn't match. And we have our respectful statements on how to navigate voters respectfully, meeting them exactly where they are in terms of education on voting and participation, and pushing them to that next level, getting them registered even if they think that they might not vote. Like, okay, at least if you're registered, you'll have the option when it comes time. So we have developed this because of all of these things that we keep hearing over and over and over again in the community. And we've come up with field tested responses that do work to help people come and join the process of voting. And of course, the voter registration messages, I think we went over this. Driver's license, NC driver's license ID, they have the signature on file with the DMV. If you don't have any NC DMV ID, you don't have your signature on file. So you're going to need to do the paper form, and up until about September 25th, you can do that and have it just mailed to you on our registration tool. So you don't have to pass pens back and forth. People can still do it online, touch-free. After about September 25th, if folks don't have that DMV issued ID, we're going to, give them a paper form that they need to get in by October 9th. So just look out for that, and we will tell you when sort of our cutoff is of that, mailing the voter their pre-filled voter registration form to then get back for free to them. And just always remember, if you're doing voter registration, you can never fill out missing information on their forms if you're doing paper forms after the voter has signed it or walked away. You can't sign a form on behalf of another person or allow a voter to do that. You can't make up any information. Check our Know Your Rights documents for sure. There are some tricky things with people with temporary housing that are all handled in our Know Your Rights documents. And another important thing, if you're doing a voter registration drive for National Voter Registration Day, you can't offer anything of value for completing a voter registration application. If you're having a pizza party, it's free pizza for everyone, and even those who are not registering. Free cookies for everyone, free candy for everyone, free stickers for everyone. You can't just single out and offer anything that can be construed as something of value only for voter registrations. And this is a new stat chart that I have been touting lately, comparing 2016 ballots accepted and by method. So early voting, like I said, for students, for young people, for new voters, for people who move a lot, is the best method to vote because 99.8% of those ballots count because of same-day registration and because you can go to any site in your county. In 2016, of the people who cast ballots, you know, some were turned away at the polls because they weren't registered and didn't cast a provisional ballot. But of the ballots cast, 98% of election day votes were counted. Mail-in ballots, 90% of those were counted. And this was due to those simple errors by a voter, signature in the wrong place, but mostly ballot was received late. And that's incurable. Like some of the things, if they contact you and they say you didn't sign it in the right place, you have time to fix that if you're able to go back and fix it. But you can never fix, if it arrives after the deadline, it is not counted. So we are really encouraging, if you're doing absentee voting by mail, you do it right away and you don't wait until it's too late. So this is a really good, helpful information for people to decide, you know, which method am I going to vote this year. And we have all of these graphics for you to use too. You know, early voting, we'll have plenty of PPE, social distancing, sanitation, plenty of hours on nights and weekends, any site in your county. And then election day, you know, only you go where you're registered, assign polling place, look up your location, look up your early voting location, or look up your election day registration right now to see if you need to update it or make sure, because if you're registered in Charlotte, but now you're in the Triangle, you'll probably not be wanting to go back to Charlotte on election day. And if you wait until the day before the election to decide what your voting option is, that is your only voting option. So look, that's why we're pushing everyone to just look themselves up through our registration tool, because if they're not there, they can just go ahead and get registered all on one page. And this was a tweet from the Postal Service about a week or two ago, so I definitely have stolen this for all of our presentations, and you can feel free to steal it too. But just know, for any registered voter can vote by mail, request an absentee ballot. There is a new online portal up on our website, on our vote by mail page, which is really great because I did it the other night and it was very, very easy. They've got the new registration form in there. It makes sense, really easy. So if folks want to request that absentee ballot, they can go ahead and do it now. If they change their mind and want to drop it off at an early voting location or choose to vote in person, that's absolutely their right as well. Just choose one way. Now, putting it all together, when we engage voters, when we see them, we educate them, but first we need to engage in a conversation. So what I always say when you're interacting with folks is, I have the latest and greatest fact-based rules for voting, the latest and greatest rules for voting right here. They change often in North Carolina. So we use our fridge card, we use our social graphics, we use our posters to capture this attention of voters first. And then we're verifying everyone's registration. Have you moved since you last voted? Let's look it up. We don't want any surprises on election day. So we've got a QR code on our materials, and you saw probably our yard sign, it has a QR code. And so what we were doing on Saturday at the food distribution drive was having folks either on our tablet, we had this up, or we had folks just scan with their phone the QR code and pull it up, and then we just verbally walk them through the process. And then of course we have all of our education that I just walked you through, what's on the ballot, making sure everyone's counting the census, early voting dates, 99.8% of those votes count, election day is November 3rd, vote by mail, let's do it now, get that request in now. So this is the overall like call to action right now. And I have a script that I'll send you in a PDF version of that. So if you just want a one pager for your staff to walk through, and so they just have the basics down, that is easy for you to share as well. And of course, we've talked about our social media kit. It's on our champions page. It's on our handouts page. And we have a really great FAQ document that is constantly being updated because the changes to the questions, the questions are pretty intense that we're getting right now. So make sure that you check this out and share fact-based information if you need to. to dispel myths. And then invite us to speak at your event. If there's an event that's already happening, I'm happy to send one of my staff members to do a 15-minute voting push. You can always use our videos. Anything that we have, is yours to share. And so we also want you to help us recruit more champions. Obviously, the state board is looking for more poll workers. There's a sign up for poll workers right on the Board of Elections website, and share with us on social media. I just want to take one more second before I go and answer your questions to make sure that you see on our homepage, we have a reporting link for misinformation and disinformation. So of course we have the Get Help Voting, Request an Educator, Find an Event, our new video here, all of our Know Your Rights documents, and then right here, report problematic content. So if you see problem content online in your mailbox, have whoever receives it fill this out, describe the problem, link to it, or upload a screenshot or a video, where it was, what your contact number is, and when you found it, and submit it. We have folks at Common Cause and other vote protectors that are checking this constantly and combating the massive influx of misinformation and disinformation into North Carolina and other states. So please report it and don't amplify. That's like the biggest message this year, is not to amplify misinformation or disinformation. That means if you're not sure about the quality of content, don't share it. Don't retweet somebody who's retweeting information that is bad. Report it. Don't share it, because then that just gets them more attention. Okay, so I want to make sure that I'm answering the questions. I think, David, you've been in the chat box a little bit. So any way to track the status of your absentee ballot application? Absolutely. Only if you use the online portal. If you use the online portal to request your absentee ballot, you can track that, that application for a ballot. If you've used the paper form, there's no way to track it, but just know that ballots will be starting to be sent out starting tomorrow. So if you requested your absentee ballot a while ago, you should be getting it within the next week or so. The Board of Elections is ready to go, ready to mail ballots out starting tomorrow. So give the Board of Elections a little bit of a grace period. And if you don't get your ballot, you can always call them and check on it. So, and then once you send it back in, every ballot will have a barcode on it. So you can do your package tracking like you would for your actual ballot. Let me see if there's any questions. If we bring our ballot to the early voting site, will we have to stand in line with everybody else? Yes, you will. For now, they may change that. They may have a separate line for drop-offs of the absentee ballot. For now, there are no drop boxes for absentee ballot forms. They want, if you're turning them in person and not by mail, you need to sign a log. They need to say who turned this in on behalf of the voter, and you can't just have them in a drop box anywhere. It's against the law. So on election day, you can turn them in at your Board of Elections office, but not at your polling site, not at your precinct. So if you can't get to that Board of Elections office, you have an absentee ballot, it's 5 o'clock on election day, you can just go vote in person at your polling site. That's probably your best option that day to get your vote in. And just preempting folks to know that with the increase of absentee vote by mail ballots, we might not know election results the day of the election, the day after the election. It's going to take a while. We're all going to need to calm our nerves and wait for the process to unfold. Let me see if there's any other questions. The urging folks to vote in person and do an absentee ballot. It is, yes, if I need to things that I didn't realize I would need to say often in 2020, you cannot vote twice. It is illegal and they track it. So if your absentee ballot was requested and received, you will be marked as voted right away in the system. There is a law that was created that, really catches folks if they try to vote. Now you could do something like go vote and then put your absentee ballot in the mail. But when they receive that ballot, they'll say, no, this voter already voted, and they won't allow it. So North Carolina has a lot of protections against that. So I'm not afraid of that. And it's a felony to vote twice and to incite someone to do so. And actual voter registration forms, absolutely. If you go to our champions page and request voter registration forms, we are prioritizing those for like assisted living facilities and other residential areas. But we absolutely, if you need some forms and some fridge cards and you got a plan to get them out, just go ahead on our champions page and request them, and we'll arrange a pickup or delivery to you. And providing stamps, absolutely. You can provide postage. We're going to be working in detention centers, and we know that voters there are going to need postage for both their absentee ballot requests and for their election day ballots. And we are absolutely happy to provide that postage to anyone who needs it for their ballot return. And information, Uber and Lyft offering free rides to the polls. You know, that, David, I don't know if you have any updates on that, but I know that they often say that they do that and you need a special code. It doesn't work for all voters, let's just say that, because some of the rural voters and the people who really have the hardest time and access, there might not be Uber or Lyft delivery services there, and they may not have drivers that are offering free services. I think it's up to the driver. So I know folks think this is that is a great fix, and it probably is a good option for some people, but just know that that doesn't solve all of the problems. The good news is a lot of the municipalities in North Carolina offer free buses and transportation on election day, which is nice. David, do you have anything else to add before we close down the meeting?
I was just looking through things to see. I think that you did a great job answering all the questions that I saw in there, Kate. So, and again, just reiterate everything that Kate said. That really, I think that timeline you had in there is really helpful for organizations to think about as far as prioritizing, getting your address right now, checking your address, making sure everybody's completed the census, and then kind of moving on from there. So encourage people to do that, and just to continue to check your FAQs, as you said, that they, you keep updating them, because there's a lot more stuff that comes in.
Yeah.
And the other thing I would say that we've gotten sometimes, and there may or may not be organizations on the call who are doing this, but if you're doing voter registration, and maybe it's being done less this year, but if you're doing voter registration and collecting the voter registration forms, make sure that you're returning them in a timely manner, because it is the state election law does require any nonprofit or other organization that is collecting those voter registration forms to turn all of them into the County Board of Elections in a timely manner. And especially right now, it's really important to do that. But again, maybe pushing people towards early voting is a key thing. 99.8% of people are.
It counts.
They counted that day. That seems like the best way to make sure your vote counts. Because ultimately the goal of any nonprofit, whether it's a faith-based organization or not, that is doing voter registration work, is to make sure that everybody that they're serving who is an eligible voter is actually voting and has their vote counted. So, whatever you can do to maximize that. I thought that chart that you had, that graph with the 3 different, percentages shows why, that's a really good reminder of why the same day registration, early voting, that one-stop process is probably the best option for anybody who can use it.
Yeah, and one final reminder, absentee ballot request forms. You cannot turn those in for a voter. Only the voter or the near relative or a MAT team can turn in that absentee ballot request. So I know in the past, You Can Vote has had those on our clipboards, and we've turned in massive amounts of absentee ballot requests in the past, along with voter registration forms, often both at the same time. But now with the absentee ballot request, it has to be the voter mailing it in or turning it in, or that near relative or the MAT team. And so for our work in detention facilities, we are going to have to do extra stamps. We're going to have to pop them in the mail for each and every voter. So it's a little bit more of a headache, or we have to call for a MAT team to come pick them up. But, you know, we want to make sure everyone's following the law correctly. All right, everyone, we've gone a little over. Sorry to keep you, but we'll send you all the materials, all the slides. David, if you shoot me the slides, I'll get them out to everyone, and we'll share the recording of this if you want to share it with anyone else too. So have a great day. Thank you so much, David.
Thank you, Kate.
All right, bye.
Bye.